said, I would like to give you an overview about our Opengear out-of-band solutions and what the current state is, where we are going, and why out-of-band is an interesting technology which you should consider for your customer projects. So briefly about the agenda, I will talk a little bit about Opengear, then what is out-of-band and what does it mean, how to use it, give you a short overview about the products, talk a little bit about out-of-band in the context with SD-WAN, because this seems to be a very hot topic right now and everybody's talking about it. And then at the very end, what comes next, because we are always trying to put new features in the software and as the title says, get out-of-band to the next level. And I'll show you what that means for us and what technologies we are working on. If you have any questions, on the bottom right there is a chat. You can type them in there, and I guess at the very end there's also some time for questions and answers, so feel free to ask whatever you want to ask. Good. Let's jump into the presentation right now. A little bit about Opengear. We are an American company, but we're founded in Australia, in Brisbane, and we are a relatively small company. Currently, a little bit less than 150 employees worldwide. The headquarters is in New Jersey, in the US. But the interesting thing about Opengear is that we are 100% focusing on the out-of-band and remote site management. We don't do anything else like other vendors do. You know, we don't do KVM, we don't do power management, we don't do racks or anything like that. 100% focus of Opengear is out-of-band. And to be honest, this is quite successful because the company has a very good growth history over the past 6-7 years. There's always been an year-over-year growth between 25 and 30%. So the company is very healthy, and it shows that we are on the right track to focusing on this one technology. I'm responsible for the sales in the German-speaking areas in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and also responsible for Eastern Europe, Russia, and Turkey. So if there are any questions, or if you need anything from Opengear and you need our support in any case, in any way, besides obviously the guys from Alstor, you can contact me, and we can try to solve all the problems and questions you have. This is the organization worldwide. So you see we have 3 locations in the US. In Utah, in the middle of the US, we also have the production. So all the products are manufactured in the US. And then we have 2 innovation and development centers, one in California and one still in Brisbane, where we have about 70 developers right now. So more or less half of all the employees of Opengear are working in development. And in Europe, we have me in Germany, in the Cologne area. We have several colleagues in the UK, 3 in France, and overall we have like 10 people in the EMEA team. Which vertical markets do we support with our solutions? Well, the good news is we don't focus on any particular, because we can serve any of those. So it doesn't matter if your customer is in the transportation industry or financing services or education, universities, retail. Every customer who has one or multiple data centers or a central IT and remote locations, which you need to connect to the central IT, is a potential customer for us, right? So it really doesn't matter which industry he belongs to. Most probably we have a solution to help him in the sense that we can connect his network equipment to a central IT, or that we can give him an alternative path to his network equipment if the primary network goes down. Just a brief overview, who are our customers? And here you can see again, we don't serve a particular vertical market. Our biggest customers are US companies right now. We're trying to work to get some large companies in Europe as well, but right now companies like Apple, Microsoft, Oracle, they all standardized on Opengear and the Opengear solutions for their worldwide data centers. If there are any questions about any of these names, just let me know. Okay, coming to out-of-band in general. So what does out-of-band mean? I already mentioned it. With an out-of-band management solution, you gain an alternative path to your network equipment. What does that mean? So in general, your network equipment is connected to a central switch in your network via an Ethernet connection, a management network. But what happens if this centralized switch, for example, goes down, or some hacker attack is attacking your network and is taking your central switch down, or some of your cabling goes wrong and suddenly you don't have access to your Cisco switch, to your Juniper switch, to your firewalls, to your storage system, whatever it is, through an Ethernet connection. Well, if the data center is just around the corner, at least you need to send somebody there, taking his laptop and trying to figure out what's wrong. If that happens in a remote location, which is 300, 400 kilometers away, in the worst case, you need to send somebody there with a car or by train or by an airplane, which is very costly and takes a lot of time. And during that time of the outage, your network is down, and also maybe your business processes are down, which cost you additional money. So out-of-band gives you an alternative path through either an serial connection. So you can each of those network devices usually still has a serial COM port through which the device is configured in the first place. And what we do is we connect those network devices through a serial connection to our console server, either through serial or Cisco, for example, they're moving away from RJ45 to USB, mini or micro USB. We can connect those USB ports directly to our devices, or you can have an IP connection if the network device does not have a serial port anymore. On the other side, if the Ethernet is down, we can still connect to the Opengear box, which is also usually running in your internal network, through a cellular connection. So if the Opengear box is no longer available to talk to those devices through the internet, through the Ethernet, excuse me, the administrator can log into the Opengear box through the cellular modem, which is built in the Opengear device, and then maneuver from the Opengear box through the serial connection or USB connection to the network device and, for example, reboot it, install another configuration, etc., etc. This is how it looks. So on the left side, you have an administrator who is responsible for monitoring and managing all the network equipment, which is in the rack on the right-hand side. And usually, as I said, all those devices are connected through the management LAN in your central network, as well as the Opengear box. The blue connections show you the console access, which you can gain either through the USB cable or the serial cable, or some additional Ethernet connection as well. And if the orange or yellow line of the management LAN goes down, you still have the connection to all those devices through the blue lines, through the serial. Let's say you have a serial connection, and can talk to those devices and get them back up and running, or do some analysis why one of the boxes failed, rather than just guessing and don't get any visibility. In general, this is let's say one-to-many connection, one Opengear box to many network devices, but you still have to log into each and every Opengear box console server at the time. So you have to know the IP address of those devices. You have to know which network device is connected to which serial port in the back of the Opengear device, etc. Now, if you only have one or two console servers, that is still possible and not a big deal. But if you have, like, for example, hundreds or even thousands of the Opengear devices, then management by Excel sheet gets a little tricky. So that's why we offer, in addition to the hardware, a management software which is called Lighthouse. And with Lighthouse, you can have a centralized view on all your Opengear equipment and on all the network equipment which is attached to the Opengear equipment. So you don't even need to know all the IP addresses of all the single devices. It's just really getting a nice GUI, clicking on the appropriate device, and immediately have access to the CLI of the Cisco router, for example. I'll show you in a little bit further how that looks like. What kind of network equipment do we support? We support almost every vendor who's out there offering network equipment. The names you see here is only an example, but I would say 99.5 or even more % of all the network equipment is supported by Opengear. Another interesting thing is that we also support PDUs, so intelligent power units, which you today find more and more in your racks as well. And the interesting thing is that through these PDUs, you can power on and off some network equipment if you need to do a hardcore switch on or switch off. So you can control every power slot on the PDU separately, and you don't need the PDU's vendor GUI in addition to the Opengear GUI. You only need one, the Opengear one, and then you can manage the Opengear devices as well as the PDUs. So that gives you, or the administrator, a little more comfort and makes it easier to handle the equipment which is in the rack. Now I would like to talk a little bit about the product itself. If there are any questions about the out-of-band technology or how it works in general, please type them in the chat. Otherwise, I will continue with a brief overview about Opengear products. So in general, we have two types of solutions. On the left-hand side, you see the 19-inch devices, which are more meant to be used in a data center in a rack. And on the right hand side you see the smaller devices, which are usually used in remote locations where you only have like 2, 3, 4 network devices which need to be connected to the central IT. And for those you don't need necessarily the large units with the many ports, but the smaller ones do the same job and are a little more reasonable in terms of size. So if you only have like a little office and you have a little rack standing somewhere, you also want a smaller size console server. So the flagship in our portfolio is the IM 7200 series. We call it Enterprise Infrastructure Manager. And this comes in different flavors. It has between 8 and 48 serial ports in the back. It also comes with 16 serial ports and 24 USB ports. You cannot charge your smartphones or anything on those USB ports because they are still used for serial connectivity. So basically what we do is we connect the standard USB cable from the Cisco router to the Opengear console server. As long as the distance is no longer than 5 meters, this will work. And we talk the serial signal through the USB connection. So you don't need any converters or anything like that. If you have many servers or storage solutions or IP devices in general in your network and want to connect those as well, we have a different module which has 16 serial ports still, standard RJ45. This is the second one from the top on the left hand side, and has 24 Ethernet ports. So it's a built-in switch. So you can connect 16 serial connections and 24 IP connections. They all come with 2 gigabit Ethernet and 2 fiber ports. You can choose if you want to have AC or DC power supplies. You always get 2. Has 16 gigabyte of internal flash, which can be used for a TFTP server. So you can store Opengear firmware or the firmware for the attached devices, network devices on the Opengear console server, and can through a scheduler, for example, do firmware updates on the connected devices. It comes with an option for cellular, so you can put a SIM card in the device and can have a cellular connection, which obviously makes sense with an out-of-band solution. It comes with software selectable RJ45 ports. That means it doesn't matter if you use Cisco devices or anything else. You can always use a straight Cat5 cable and define the configuration of the serial port through the firmware of the device. So you can either call it Cisco straight or Cisco rolled, but you can always use a standard Cat5 cable. You don't need the expensive Cisco cable anymore. And last but not least, all the Opengear products we're talking about have 4 years of warranty, standard. So that shows that we're pretty confident that those units are really reliable and are out there for many years. If you don't need all the features an IM 7200 offers, we have I call it more like basic version in the 19-inch family, which is called CM 7100. It has between 16 and 96 ports, so 96 meaning 48 in the front and 48 in the back. Also 2 gigabit Ethernet, no fiber, only AC power supplies, 1 or 2, less memory, a little smaller processor, but otherwise exactly the same functionality. Also comes with 4 years of warranty, and only the Ethernet connection towards the network, no cellular or anything else. But in some cases, this is sufficient enough and will do the job as fine as the others. And then coming to the smaller products, they are quite similar to the large ones. First one is the one with cellular, called Resilience Gateway, and as you can see from the features, it's more or less the same like the other ones, like the larger ones. It comes with 4 serial ports in the back, 8 serial ports, or 4 serial and 4 Ethernet. So there's a 4-port switch built in. All the units have 4 USB ports built in as well, and you can use those USB ports either as standard USB, so you can plug in a thumb drive and extend your internal memory, or just plug a thumb drive in if you want to do a firmware upgrade or something, or you can configure them as serial ports and can do basically serial over USB, like with the IM72 I showed you earlier. So in theory, the 8-port unit is a 12-port unit if you configure all the 4 USB ports as serial as well. Depends on the infrastructure you have. Also, those devices come with 4 years of warranty, and if you don't need the cellular, you can go to the remote site gateway. Same functionality, same feature set, except the cellular, and also the same port count. So 4 serial, 8 serial, or 4 serial and 4 Ethernet ports in the back. That's about the hardware. So, and this is the portfolio Opengear makes its money with on the hardware side. So, as I said before, we don't have a huge portfolio. We don't have different kind of technologies in our portfolio. The only focus is the out of band, and here you see the differentiation between the 19-inch products within themselves and the small box products, and that's about it, right? So very focused. In addition to the models, we offer a handful of sensors, so you can do environmental monitoring as well. For example, if you use a door contact, for example, and you have a rack which door should always remain closed, and for whatever reason the door gets opened, the door contact, which is connected to the Opengear console server, will send a signal to the console server, and then the console server will, for example, send an email or an SMS message to an administrator and say, hey, something happened here on the door got opened, even though it's not supposed to, what should I do? And then you can even configure or define additional processes which should happen after that. So in the best case, let's say you can say, okay, nobody's supposed to open that door ever, shut down the central server or shut down the central switch or do a reboot of something or whatever, right? So it's very sophisticated in the sense of sending alerts to an administrator or doing some onward actions to an alert that happened. Security is always a big topic, and we believe that we are on top of the curve here with all the offerings we have in terms of security. So all the products have a built-in firewall, for example. In terms of protocols, we support the most secure ones: OpenVPN, SSH, HTTPS. We work with different authentication services like LDAP, TechX, Radius, and even two-factor authentication. And we can do a lot of logging, even down to the single port. So we can do logging, who is logging into which serial port of which Opengear device, when, how long was he on the console, what characters did he type in. You can monitor and track passwords if you want to. You don't have to, but it's a very, very sophisticated technology which is built in the console server. So, and in terms of security, I think we are state of the art today. So this is it about the hardware products. I would like to touch the management, centralized management software, Lighthouse, as well, because honestly, with I think every second project we have right now, we are selling Lighthouse as the management tool as well. And also there, in terms of security, in terms of you can even call it sharpness, it's very sophisticated. So there's no Java anymore. It's all HTML5 based. You can have access to the CLIs of the Opengear devices and the attached devices. You can implement it with a RESTful API into other management applications if a customer already has that. All the Opengear devices connect through a secure OpenVPN to Lighthouse, so there's no way that somebody else can listen into the communication between the Opengear device and Lighthouse. And yeah, so it's, as I said, it's very well received in the market, and we basically see it as or under three headlines. The one and the first one is that it's basically a central hub for the out-of-band net management network. What does that mean? So all the Opengear devices basically call home to Lighthouse. They are all registered in Lighthouse then. As I said, there's a VPN connection between the device and Lighthouse, and it works under all network circumstances. The second one is that it basically gives you access to all the console ports of all the console servers which are deployed out in the field. You will get a nice list of all the Opengear devices. You'll get a list of all the ports per device. You can have a direct link to the web terminal of the Opengear devices or the CLI. And you can do nice things like quick search or anything. For example, if you are an administrator who needs to take care of all Cisco devices no matter where they are deployed, you can just search for Cisco and it shows you all Cisco routers which are attached to any Opengear device no matter where the location is, and then you can work with those. Right, you don't need to know any IP addresses of those devices, etc. So it makes it very comfortable. And the third one is we see it as a central management portal because you can do all the authentication through the Lighthouse server or Lighthouse application. So you can do all the authentication. You can define smart groups, for example. So if group A logs in, they can see everything, all the equipment which is installed in Warsaw. If group B logs in, they can see everything that's located in New York, or they can see everything related to a certain vendor, or they can even see just defined down to a single port. Right. So, for example, you can have 148 port devices deployed, but you can configure it down to a single port. So, if I would log in, I only see port 33 of one particular console server, which is installed in Cologne, for example. And even though there are 99 other console servers out there, I don't have a single clue that they're out there because I don't see them. And then the last thing, which is important, zero-touch provisioning. This is, well, a keyword which is out there quite a lot as well. So it helps you to enroll new sites very easy and without a lot of intervention of an system integrator on site, system integrator or system engineer outside, because you can basically prepare the units, send them out, and they do all the enrollment automatically. So they get powered up, they get connected, they call into Lighthouse. Lighthouse says, yes, I know you, here's your final configuration file, for example, downloads it, reboots it, and off you go, right? And you don't need an engineer on site who is doing this all with his laptop in his hands. A new feature which just recently got published is the multi-instance. So earlier we only had one Lighthouse instance, and some of the larger customers told us, well, you know, actually we need to have redundancy here. So now you can have one primary Lighthouse server and up to 9 additional secondaries. And it doesn't matter where they are. They can be in your local network, they can be installed somewhere in the cloud. That's totally up to you or the end customer. The only thing that is not happening is that Opengear is hosting those Lighthouse servers. We don't do that. That's part of the job of a system integrator or the end customer. But the good thing is, if the connection to the primary Lighthouse server is down for whatever reason, you can define a secondary one and make him a primary again, as long as the first one is not online. If it's online, you can switch them back. Second thing is, you can do all the IP management through Lighthouse now as well. Before it was only possible through the Opengear console server directly, but now you can do all the IP management of all the devices, network devices, which don't have a serial interface anymore, through Lighthouse as well. And that basically gives you all the overview of all the network equipment you have installed in your network. And it's very easy to handle those units in addition to the serial units as well. I guess this presentation will be shared with you afterwards, so I'm not reading through all this again. It's just a summary of the nice features, but you can see you can do a lot of nice things with Lighthouse, and it's very sophisticated in terms of managing your console servers and managing your network equipment, either in your data center or in your remote locations. As I said, zero-touch provisioning is in everybody's mouth now. Well, zero-touch is a big word. We currently, at least, we like to call it low-touch provisioning, because you still need to do something with the console server before you send it out to the remote location. You need to prepare it a little bit. In the future, there's going to be real zero-touch, and I will talk about this in the last slide, because that's one of the future features we're going to. So that was that. I said in the beginning I want to touch a little bit about Opengear and how we are playing in the SD-WAN environment with the smart out-of-band solutions. Now, as many of you know, SD-WAN is a big hype right now. Everybody wants to do virtualization on the network equipment, which is an interesting thing. But the problem is that all those SD-WAN users, and it doesn't matter what the SD-WAN manufacturer or vendor is telling you, how resilient they are, but if the connection, the network connection outside of the building, for example, is gone, and you don't have any connection from the remote location to your primary network because the infrastructure is not there, because, I don't know, a digger in front of the building cut a big cable from Telefonica or from Vodafone or whoever, then this remote site is blind, because you have no way of accessing this remote site from your central IT. In case you have an out-of-band solution installed in the remote location, there is a way, because then you can connect through the cellular connection of the Opengear device to the Opengear device itself, and then through either an IP connection or a serial connection can connect to the box of the SD-WAN vendor and fix some configurations, or in case, these boxes need a lot of maintenance, so you need to do many firmware upgrades and software upgrades constantly to keep all the different drivers up and running. If one of them fails, and that's the reason why one of those boxes fails, then you need a second path to this box. And rather than sending somebody out again, you log into the Opengear device, connect to the SD-WAN box through the serial connection, and reconfigure the box, do a factory reset or whatever, right? You can do it all remotely. You don't need to have somebody on site fixing the problems. So you can find this information on our website. It's open for everybody. This is how we see it. So usually you would have one Opengear device in your main office, in your central IT, and in your remote location, one of the smaller boxes would make sense, because you only need access then to the SD-WAN router. And to prove that this is working, we have a technical or technology partnership with one of the SD-WAN vendors right now, a company called Silverpeak. You can also find the white paper and stuff on our website, and we have a nice case study with one of our customers in the US. They are a financial services company, and they have 525 branches all over the US. And in each of these locations, the customer installed one of these little racks to exactly be able to do what I just said. Because if the Silverpeak box fails, the entire network infrastructure is down and nobody can access the network anymore. Well, guess what? They installed a small Opengear box with cellular in those little racks, and if something happens, the administrator logs into the Opengear box, connects to the Silverpeak box, and goes from there, right? And he can get the system back up and running usually in a couple of minutes rather than hours or sometimes even days. And that makes the big difference. Okay, and last but not least, I promised you to talk a little bit about the, let's say, near-term future. Where are we going? Because honestly, if you look at the hardware in the console server area, these boxes are very sophisticated, and there's not so much to be added. I mean, you can add some stuff, but does it really make sense? I don't know. So we are heavily investing more in the software and the intelligence of those units. You saw it with Lighthouse. And the second step is the NetOps automation. So what do we do, or what do we mean with that? We want to give a network administrator the best tool that he can deploy and service devices which are out there in the field, Opengear devices as well as network devices, and especially when it comes to deployment of new sites and new devices. Wouldn't it be great if you could just take a box of whatever network equipment you have, send it to the remote site without even touching it, in addition with an Opengear device? Somebody still needs to plug in the cables, yes, that is true. But wouldn't it be nice if all the other configuration and administration of those devices could be automated? So once the Opengear box is connected to the network, and the other network equipment, switches, router, firewalls, whatever you have, is connected to the network and the Opengear device. The Opengear device is connecting to Lighthouse. Lighthouse will say, oh, and gives the information, hey, I have this Cisco router, I have this Juniper switch, I have this firewall, and I have this storage system. Gives all this information to Lighthouse, and Lighthouse says, okay, I got this, I see that this is authorized. Lighthouse goes into some repository and grabs configuration files for each of those devices, puts it into one single file, sends it back to the console server. The console server says, yeah, okay, and now I'm distributing this file to the Cisco router, this file to the Juniper switch, and this file to the storage system. Now, that would give the administrator a lot of free time to spend his time on other stuff and not configuring all the remote locations. The good thing is we can do this already, and we are working on improving this technology quite heavily. How do we do this? We use Docker containers. So on the console server, on the console server on the remote side is capable of working and handling Docker containers and applications in Docker containers. So he's running an Opengear Docker application. The same application is running on Lighthouse. And then we are working with tools like Ansible and Git, for example, to put together the configuration files, get all the repository information, put it together, and send it back to the remote site. And this is the way we are going, and we think this way of automating the rollout and deployment processes will make it much, much easier for network administrators to do rollouts, to handle those, and to free up that time to do other stuff they are paid to do for. Right now, there are two NetOps modules we have. One is called Secure Provisioning. That's exactly what I was talking about, that you have the ability on a remote site do all the configuration and deployment of Opengear devices and the network equipment automatically without somebody physically interfering there, except putting together the cables, that's for sure. And then we're working together with a company called Logzilla. They are doing log and event management and analyzers, and we can use the Lighthouse server as a repository for logging all those logs and events. Now the good news is Logzilla is not logging everything, every event that's happening on the network, because the server, the Lighthouse server would be huge, but in terms of capacity, but they have very, very smart filtering capabilities so that you can narrow down very narrowly what you want to log, really, and you can use the Lighthouse server as a logging server for all those events. And as the console server on the remote side is capable of handling Docker files in general, you can use the console server also as a Docker server for other applications which don't have to do anything with out of band, for example. Right? If your customer wants to use other Docker applications, there are millions out there, open source, for doing some totally different networking stuff or application stuff. Hey, feel free to do so. We just give you the platform to do this. But we are using it for all the purposes of remote site management and network equipment management, either in the data center or on remote sites. And over the next 12, 18 months, there's going to be a lot of more improvement on this technology. We started with this last year, or beginning of this year, sorry. And now we're at a stage where we can say, okay, we have a solid platform where we can build on. So be prepared for the next 2 years to see way more out there and give the network administrator many more tools to make his life much, much easier in terms of out-of-band management, remote site management, and network equipment management. And that was it for me. So I know that was quite a lot of information. I tried to put it to keep it relatively short still. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. If you are too shy, that's fine as well. You can ask the Alstor guys afterwards. They will be able to answer those questions as well, most probably. And yeah, I guess the presentation is going to be distributed to all you guys who are on the call. So you see my contact details here. Feel free to reach out to us. We are more than happy to help you implementing those kind of solutions at your customer together with Alstor. Yeah, and again, if there's any question, Blažej, maybe you want to take over again and take them in Polish if you want. That makes it maybe a little easier for the guys on the call. Well, thank you anyway for your participation, and again, if there are questions, shout out, please now.
Jeśli pojawią się jakieś pytania dotyczące prezentacji i rozwiązań Opengear, to oczywiście można je zadać drogą mailową. Można też tutaj zadać na czacie. Jeśli nie będzie w ciągu najbliższych kilku minut pytań, to oczywiście jesteśmy gotowi odpowiedzieć na pytania drogą mailową lub też telefonicznie. Przypominam, że produkt managerem odpowiedzialnym za rozwiązanie Opengear w Alstor SDS jest Przemek Prochera, ale również Państwo mogą kontaktować się bezpośrednio ze swoimi doradcami handlowymi. Zapraszam do zadawania pytań. Z naszej strony byłoby to wszystko. Dziękujemy bardzo za obecność i uczestnictwo w dzisiejszym webinarze. Dirk, thank you very much for your time. And I hope a question will appear on email, or maybe people will contact straight to our product manager or sales managers. So if we will have questions that we will not be able to answer, we will contact with you.
You're very welcome. Please do so.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.